Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking About Birds, the only Cardinal podcast more afraid of commitment than John Mozeliak. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Vin Scully.
Man, shots fired at Mo. Wow.
And this week, we are mostly going to be focusing on the trade deadline for the Cardinals, the NL Central, and the rest of the league. If you have an idea for the opening joke, tweet us at Talk About Birds. Ben, we have a lot to talk about this week.
My goodness.
One of the more league-wide dramatic trade deadlines that we have ever seen, including maybe the biggest trade that has ever happened.
Well,
but
and at the same time, a lot of people weren't traded. Like, what were the hell were the Cubs doing? But we'll talk about that.
It's a weird, a lot of weird moves also that we're going to talk about. But before we dig into that, I've got two stupid things to talk to you about.
Okay.
One, and this is just a personal note, about 25% of my body is covered in poison ivy right now. So, so that's just.
I'm glad you waited to tell me that until we were recording. So I enjoyed that quite a bit.
That's just a thing that I'm dealing with.
Let me
right
guess,
now.
you lost a quarter in a patch of poison ivy, and you just couldn't let it go.
Yeah, I was trying to put it in the Pac-Man.
Yeah,
and it slipped. Because I had all that buffalo sauce on my hands, and it fell into a poison ivy patch really poorly. Yeah. No, I did I went on a hike with the fam, Han State Park. It was beautiful, and I mean it was great until I woke up at 4 a.m. In distress, and I'm still dealing with it. I think I'm getting better, but. Yeah. I felt that you and the listeners, for some reason, should know this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all very concerned with the current condition of your skin. So thank you for the update. I guess, what do? You take an oatmeal bath, or you just grip it and rip it? Jeffrey's saying hi.
I can tell they're concerned. It's a lot of creams. And a little bit of gripping and ripping it, and some scratching and itching, and and self-control. I find myself sitting there being like, "You are stronger than this. The itch does not need to be scratched.
Yeah,
you can move on from this."
Sure. So you just pile that on top of the lies you're already telling yourself, and it's NBD. Yeah.
I am. This house of cards is going to collapse at any moment. But speaking of lies and not being entirely self-aware, you and I are going to see each other again tomorrow.
Yes,
and we're going back to the scene of a previous failure, which is the fishing tournament, and I believe will be the scene of a future failure.
Yeah.
Which is that you have placed a bet with just us, just like I think yourself with the world, that you could smash a watermelon in between your thighs.
Yes.
And I've been a big doubter of this. And I know you've been doing the leg presses. I've seen you. You've sent videos of the workout.
Intimidation clips. It's really, I'm trying to intimidate the world.
A watermelon.
I'm also trying to goat somebody else into trying it. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but yeah. Well, I will say, so I know this sounds really cool and people like hearing people talk about this, but we have an upcoming wedding. I'd like to look nice. I've been exercising maybe a little bit more. I don't remember even how this conversation came up. I do not remember the etymology of this challenge.
I actually don't either. And I got a reminder on my phone that said, that was set for like we do this yearly friend lake trip. and it was just set for June 1st, which previous Nate would have known that this was enough time, or maybe it was July 1st, but anyway, enough time to like remember and remind Ben before the trip, even if the trip hadn't been planned. So
sure.
I don't remember when we had this conversation either, but past Nate was smart enough to set a reminder for future Nate. And here we are. You're going to try to live up to this.
Yeah. I don't think try so much as crush it. I think pretty easily. I don't think I'm going to like sit down and like, I think there will probably be some technique that I need to figure out. But I feel very confident. So
I think it's going to come down. It's going to come down to the watermelon choice, which we have determined is your choice.
I think that there's something to that. Although I think the idea that you think, or I think I have the ability to choose a watermelon that has a failure point or limited structural stability is insane. That there's no way.
It's not about being, if you have like 10 watermelon that are all the same in front of you and you're picking which one is the faintest of heart or anything like that. I mean, like, I think, and I'm not going to, I don't want to tap the glass here. I don't want to give you any undue, advice, but I think there's a type of a shape and size that you should be targeting.
Yeah.
And I because when you go to the grocery store, there's all sorts of watermelons, right? So you've got to pick the right one that is smashable. So we have actual things to talk about this episode, unlike normally, but I wanted to
throw out the challenge. Is that what you're doing?
I wanted everyone to be aware of this and why you may miss next week.
Wow. I don't know how wrong this could go. I like to be clear. If I can't do it, I'm just going to stop and we'll eat the watermelon. I'm a competitive person, but yeah, I'd like to keep the structural integrity of my legs intact. And while I will say, I'll just preempt this. Well, this will likely be a filmed event. I'm not putting this on social media. I don't want to hear anything about it after this.
You're not.
I will squish your little head.
There's a Patreon tier somewhere out there.
Okay. Now that is true. If we could figure out a way so some bonus content on the Patreon, then I could maybe be convinced.
That's the type of content our patrons deserve.
If I'm holding a baseball in one hand, that technically counts.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, all right, let's get back into.
I'd also like to point out there are no stakes on this on your side. This is just me trying to do something. Yeah. Although if I do it, I'm going to come up with something that I'm going to make you do. I don't know what exactly it's going to be.
At the very least, you're going to get an entire watermelon because none of us are going to want to eat a watermelon.
Maybe I'll make you eat the watermelon.
No, you can't add that after this. I'm not.
Honestly, Nate, if I can squish a watermelon in between my legs, I can physically dominate you into eating it. So.
I think I could outrun you.
Maybe.
I'm just going to jump into the lake and swim. All right. Well, anyway,
I feel objectified.
Much like, Ben struggling to smash a watermelon in between his legs. Cardinal fans struggled to find some joy during the trade deadline until the very end. Yeah, man, that was a rough segue that I was making up as I was going.
Yeah, you're a bad broadcaster.
Not a broadcaster. I'm in my room. All right. So we talked a little bit about how to organize this, and I think it makes most sense. We've got to start with the Juan Soto trade. You and I both were pretty aligned that whatever the cost, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter because you now have Juan Soto. And clearly the Padres felt the same way, and the Cardinals did not. So it was, I'd say, one of the more stressful is not the right word because I don't actually feel like crazy stress about the trade deadline, but one of the more intriguing trade deadlines that Cardinal fans have had for a while. just because of the degree of rumors and the reality that the Cardinals were actually involved in this and were one of the final teams. Now you could say, here we go, it's the Cardinals getting second place again in a trade, but we actually don't know that. It's probably more like tied for third with the Dodgers. But at the end of the day,
I question how serious the Dodgers were. Like I wonder how much chess was being played by Rizzo and the Dodgers and even Boris just to gas it up. And he's friends with the Lerners, and I wonder, like, later reports are kind of making it sound like the Cardinals were out a day before it even went through.
Yeah.
And like I said,
I
I know Juan Soto, we talked about this ad nauseum. I know Juan Soto is a special player, as special as a player can get, really, especially being, age and everything involved. But I do wonder, Friedman and the Dodgers just have not given up their top prospects for anything. The only time that they've done it that I can really think of is last year, and they got a Hall of Famer and maybe a potential Hall of Famer in Scherzer and Trey Turner.
And they traded from a place of significant depth. Keibert Ruiz is not going to play over Will Smith. They already have one of the best catchers in baseball. So it's like it's like a step down of the Cardinals trading Carson Kelly in the Goldschmidt trade, because Kelly was never going to play over Yachty, and that worked out well for us. And
all that said, so just like to circle the wagons on that, like, I wonder how earnest it was. I wonder, it seemed like Preller and the Padres were getting Soto. End of sentence. It was just going to happen. He would push another name in or do something else crazy, or I don't know, donate whatever it would cost. It just seemed like he would cut off his arm to get Soto. And they did, and it was expensive.
Especially kind of jumping ahead here, but that part at the very end of it where Hosmer was in the deal, and everyone's like, what, the Padres got rid of Hosmer in this, and then Hosmer said no, and they still just moved forward with the trade, and instead gave up Luke Voit, which, poor Luke Voit, he's like, hell yeah, we're getting Soto and Bell. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden he's part of the trade and is now part of the Nationals. But yeah, I agree. It's an insane haul for Soto, even though it's probably worth it.
And I'm sure most of the people listening know, but I think just to keep everything straight, the Padres received Juan Soto and Josh Bell, who is having a pretty nice year in Washington. The Nationals receive Luke Voit, as Nate just said, superstar prospect CJ Abrams, who's a shortstop, superstar prospect Mackenzie Gore, who is a left-handed starting pitcher, Robert Hassel III, James Wood, and Harlan Susana. And I will admit, I do not know much about James Wood and Harlan Susana. But you have, those are the Abrams, Gore, and Hassel are very, very potentially prospects.
And don't sleep on James Wood. I think he's 19 years old. He's a 6'7" center fielder. Some people think that people in the Padres organization ranked him as actually their number one prospect. He's just so young. He hasn't had a chance to really establish himself, but a lot of people expect him to fly up the rankings, and they just got him when he's so young and new to the league that we haven't seen much of him yet. So I don't know as much about Susana, but Wood I'm more familiar with, and it's a haul. Abrams is an interesting moment in his career in that he has made the major leagues and has had limited exposure and limited success, but the pedigree is there. And then Mackenzie Gore is hurt, maybe Tommy John, which, sucks, but the Nationals rebuild timeline is long enough that coming back from Tommy John is fine. If Mackenzie Gore was healthy, he's never traded. Or maybe they don't have to give up some of these other pieces, because it'd be like well, the Cardinals don't really have an equivalent to Mackenzie Gore anymore. It'd be like trading, Flaherty like pre-2019 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think Liberatore is close to that. I think Mackenzie Gore definitely has more pedigree and more stuff. But I think Liberatore is like it's impossible to kind of compare 1-to-1. But as far like I think that's close-ish, like lefties with good stuff.
Yeah. So to me, like the real equivalent of this trade, if the Cardinals were to get it done and beat the Padres, it would have started at Carlson, Gorman, Wynn, Walker, probably Liberatore, Thompson, and also someone like Tink Hintz. So we're not talking like, oh, you can somehow hold on to one of Walker and Wynn, or you can somehow hold on to Carlson and or Gorman. It's like, no, they're all gone for Soto. And while, we don't know whether that will be the right choice, we said last time that the combined war of Carlson and Gorman, we'd be lucky if that matches what Soto puts out in a single season.
Yeah.
There's still the element that you have to field a big league team. And if you trade your 4 best, maybe 5 or 6 best young players, it creates a problem. And I don't know. We won't know. We'll never know if it's the right choice, because however Soto performs in San Diego, it may not be how he would have performed in St. Louis. But I will say that I am content with the decision that was made by the Cardinals after seeing what the Padres got. Keith Law said this is the biggest trade of all time.
I think there's something to be said to that. I mean, this trade is unprecedented for so many reasons. Like, obviously, the star of the trade probably being reason number one. You're trading like a 23-year-old Ted Williams or Mike Trout or whatever Hall of Famer you want to attach to it. If things break out the way that we think they're going to go, and then on the Nationals and the Padres, this is a organizational changing trade either way. If the Nationals screwed up on the guys that they chose, it's going to set them back really far. And if they didn't, the Nationals could be very competitive in a couple of years because they got that quality of names back. Not to mention the other things that they've done in the past 2 years, the trades that they made. We talked about Kubert and Josiah Gray and some of the other things that they've done. Like, we will see. But I don't know if I agree with you. I still think that, like the Soto of it all is very important, and his contribution to what the Cardinals would be is, like you said, it's kind of unknowable now, of course, because they didn't get him. But I wouldn't say I so much was like, whew, glad we didn't go for him. I still feel like he is who he is. He's only getting better. We're about to see something incredible.
Well, that is also part of the basis of the joke that I did at the opening, which is that, like, I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with the decision. Just I understand it and I'm content with it. But it is very much Mozeliak to be like, I'm unwilling to go that far when a guy like Preller is. Now, the Padres have very little success to show for that willingness to do that. But we're obviously this year they're on a playoff track, and now with Tatis coming back, they look like the best lineup in baseball, and they had starting pitching depth. So they are a World Series contender with this trade.
AJ Preller is the kind of guy, if you're like playing chicken with him, like against him in a set of cards, like you're absolutely turning out of the way first because he's just going to hit you. Yeah. Dude's unhinged. Made it happen, though. I say all the credit. Like, how many Padres games am I going to watch, as the year winds down, especially with Tatis coming back?
And, to be like, we just talked some sugar on all these guys, but they are still prospects. Like, Abrams hasn't clicked at the major league level, though it's incredibly small sample size. Gore is out for a while. And while medical, recovery is as good as it's ever been, you just truly don't know. And then after that, it's just prospects. And, odds are they won't break out the way that you want them to. So, like, this could end up looking like an absolute steal. Or Abrams becomes the best shortstop in baseball. Mackenzie Gore becomes an ace. Hassel and Woods are dynamic outfielders, and Susanna's a fantastic pitcher. So we just don't know. We'll see. But I understand why Mozeliak didn't do that. And part of me is I am still glad to be able to root for Jordan Walker and
Yes.
Mason Wynn. I would have been, again, we were lobbying for trade whatever to get Soto. I would have been happy with that. Don't get me wrong, but I am also still kind of happy. Not kind of. I'm still very happy to get to watch the Jordan Walker progression. He's starting in right field now, and there's a clear path to starting time in right field now. Mason Wynn home run in today's game just looks like a dynamic player. When's the last time the Cardinals have had a shortstop prospect that is of the seeming caliber of Mason Wynn? There's still a lot of fun to be had with a lot more fun to be had with this.
And include Gorman in there. We talked about it. Yeah. Gorman is going to settle into the big leagues, and he's going to go on some tears where he just is smacking bombs all over the place. So I agree that definitely makes it the whiskey go down smoother or whatever. So I appreciate all of that. I still want Juan Soto, but Walker kind of tearing up Double-A. And I think it's particularly interesting that as soon as the trading deadline passes, they start him in the outfield. That probably would have, maybe potentially decreased his value. Gassing him up as a third baseman is probably slightly more valuable than a third baseman.
Maybe, but I think it's also there's a new open. We'll talk about it here in a moment. Yeah. But there is one less major league outfielder now, and so.
Should we just let's get into what Mo did do?
Yeah. All right. So we're going to try to do this in mostly chronological order. So the first trade that happened, and this was, before a lot of things started to happen, but pretty surprising. Although once we dug in a little bit, I thought it made a lot more sense. The Cardinals traded Edmundo Sosa for reliever Jojo Ramirez, which great name. We got a Jojo, we got a Packy,
Newt,
just all-star names.
Now.
Yeah. And that's really where the analysis on this show stops. Starts and stops. Now I was initially a little shocked to see them trade Edmundo Sosa, but also once really started to think about it, it made a ton of sense. He's out of options.
Yeah.
The Cardinals obviously are invested in Paul DeJong.
Oh my God, does John Mozeliak love Paul DeJong?
Well, they've given him dollars to be their starting shortstop, and to be fair, having a great time at AAA.
Sure.
So they clearly had decided Paul DeJong's getting his shot again. Whether that's right or wrong, we'll find out. But it was obvious that that was what they wanted to do. And so you look at the available players on the team that you could move around, and we have a dearth of infielders who all kind of do the same thing. It's why we saw Kramer Robertson just let go earlier in the season. And so no options.
Yeah.
What do? You get something for him.
Yeah. Do you have him or Brendan Donovan take up that space? And I think obviously based on this year's performance, you have Brendan Donovan take that space. A little more flexibility, probably a little worse glove, maybe a bit better bat. Although I do feel like Sosa has some life in that bat still. I think he just kind of had a down start to the year and not much playing time. So we'll see. Jojo, I don't know. What do you say about Jojo? He's kind of a little guy. He's very well put together. He throws the ball really hard. Doesn't always know where it's going, but he's had some success in the minors. You take a flyer on a guy like that. I will say a team like Philly, who is desperate for pitching, always, them giving up on a reliever gives me a little bit of pause, but trust in the Cardinals player dev and all that stuff, I suppose.
Yeah, I would say, they're not necessarily the best at identifying pitching talent. So them giving up on someone isn't necessarily a negative in that player's overview. So yeah, it's fine. This is, it's good to get something for Sosa. And if Jojo can end up becoming successful and a valuable piece of the bullpen, then great. But if not, then it's better than DFAing him and just letting him go. But I will always remember Sosa and his part in the 17-game win streak. And, between him and Bader, there's a little less just sort of fun on this team after this trade deadline, though we don't necessarily know the personalities of these new guys yet. But, that was the bummer for me, is sort of off the field stuff. I really liked Sosa. He just played with an energy that's fun. But obviously less important compared to what you're doing on the field. And
and I'll note, the video that was kind of going around on Twitter when they made this trade was JoJo was like slamming a Red Bull, then slams the can against his glove, punches himself in the chest, and walks out in the field. And that's not the energy that Sosa brought, but that's definitely a type of energy that is fun, from a fan perspective.
It's more what, as Cardinal, a lot of the Cardinal legends are more that type than the like giant smile after hitting a triple. When you were talking about videos, I thought you were going to say the other one that was going around, which was Sosa's insane play up the middle, turn, throw, and just nails the umpire right in the side of the head.
Honestly, he should have been looking. What are you doing there?
Yeah, come on. That's on him. So not a lot to say about this trade, but hopefully, we wish Sosa good luck with Philly, and hopefully JoJo can put something together and be useful for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
The next thing, the one that I won't say we were the only ones that predicted, but this we directly said, like, this is the most likely trade for the Cardinals on this podcast. And I don't think, again, that was an original thought, but I did, have a little bit like, we super called this. It was it was like the Cardinal trade. The Cardinals have acquired former Cub great Jose Quintana.
Hey, he had a really good run with the White Sox. Don't discount that. He's our guy now.
Well, that's why they traded Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease.
Yeah.
Major parts of their current, championship seeking team. They traded both of those guys for Jose Quintana. So, which is part of why this makes it a classic Cardinals trade. This is a guy who at one point in his career was really, really good, was considered one of the best pitchers in baseball, one of the bright young stars. And that's why the Cubs really paid for him from the White Sox when they were rebuilding. For whatever reason, that basically all fell apart the moment he was traded to the Cubs. Makes me like him a little bit more.
Yeah. Absolutely. And secret agent.
And now he's a part of the Cardinals.
Yeah.
He was traded for, talking about Bird's favorite Jose, reading his name while I'm talking about him, Johan Oviedo and Malcolm Nunez.
Yeah.
I think a super normal price to pay for a 2-month rental of a pitcher that's having a very, very good year. And I think we're bummed to see Oviedo go, but frankly, he just hasn't been doing it. And we need pitchers right now. And I think we'd be glad that that's who was given up for this. And hopefully Oviedo could put it together. And Malcolm Nunez, who is young and exciting, but is like multiple steps behind multiple other players on the depth chart.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. I thought this trade was good, made a lot of sense, and Quintana's exactly what this team needs right now.
Yeah, when you have position player depth in your prospect pool, is exactly the kind of move you make. It does not set the team back at all. And it makes sense. I think also, like, Stratton has room to grow. He is underperforming his peripherals a little bit, but really, let's talk about Quintana and how good of a year that he has had this year.
Yeah, I didn't even say Stratton, which came in late when this was announced, and makes this trade even better to me. But
you imagine Stratton will probably take a role that Verhagen or Wickren or any of those guys tried to take. I know he finished up that game that the Cardinals were winning the day before recording on Tuesday night. And that's probably what he'll do. But we need somebody like that. How many times have we talked about innings? But on the Quintana part of it, we're getting somebody who has, all the experience and all the intangibles and all that good stuff. But we're getting somebody who, when he came to the Pirates, he was kind of looking for something to change. He was looking, this is a pillow. I think I saw Fangraphs call it's a rolled up towel contract, like less than a pillow contract, because that's kind of where his career was. He, sits down with the brass in the Pirates front office, and the pitching coach asked him, why don't you throw your changeup more? It's your best pitch. Why don't you lean on that? And he was throwing it about 9% of the time. He throws it a little over 20% of the time now. And actually, as the season has gone on, it's getting close to 30%. So he's throwing his best pitch more often. And then what he said, I was reading this interview that he gave, he basically said that I can control this pitch any day. And it comes out of my hand good every day. So this is something he feels confident in. And the reason I bring all this up is because I think you can look at his numbers and look at the performance with the Pirates. And when a player makes a change like this, it's a real fundamental change with how they go about their pitch planning. That's something that is translatable. That he'll slot into the Cardinals rotation, pump that change up, and I think the success will continue. I kind of chopped up my thoughts there to continue back on the Quintana side of it, to end his quote. And I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, but he was talking about how now, throwing the change up close to 30% of the time, not only does he just feel better because he likes that pitch more, but it makes his fastball more effective. He's got a decent curveball, and it's pretty much all he throws. So I think Cardinals fans should be legitimately, I don't know if excited is the right word, but this is a good move. This is not a John Lester trade. This is not a J.A. Happ trade. This is a trade for a pitcher who's been very successful this year by making a real change to their game. So I'm very happy about this trade.
You could argue, and there would be some stats to back this up, that this year alone, the Cardinals have he has been the best player or the best pitcher now on this Cardinals starting staff.
Yeah.
It is not, it's a low bar to jump over, but this is not a Happ. This is not a Lester. This is a guy who is performing well on a bad team, which matters, especially for, outcomes. He's going on a improved defensive team, improved offensive team, just a better team across the board. So I was really excited by this. We kind of gave it the idea of acquiring Quintana crap, when we were talking through this, because there were guys like Pablo Lopez,
Frankie Montas, Tyler
Frankie
Mahle,
Montas, there
Luis
were guys
Castillo.
like that. Yeah. On the trade block. And that's, I think it's fair to say Quintana is not as fun or good or exciting as at least like a Lopez and a Castillo. I think when you get to the Mahles and guys like that and the Syndergaards, even Syndergaard is a big name because of the success that he's had, but him as a pitcher for the Angels is not the Syndergaard of old. I think a lot of these guys are all in the same bucket, and I'll take what it took to get Quintana over some of the trades that happened. So I'm altogether excited for it. This is especially paired with the trade that happened later. This is what the Cardinals needed. The bullpen is good when it doesn't have to do 5 innings a game every game. And so he should give you innings. He should give you at least a quality effort. And, the bar again is really low right now for improving the rotation, but I thought it was a good trade. And even though he gave up a guy that we really like in Oviedo, you got to trade talent to get some talent, even though they could have, the Pirates aren't going to get anything for 2 more months of Quintana. They still you don't give up a player for nothing. Right.
Especially in the division. You can't just be like, here's a win. Yeah.
Yeah. The Pirates would rather just hold Quintana for 2 more months than give him away. So you've got to give something.
I think the price was fine. I think if anybody who is shocked by that is, I just disagree heavily. I really hope that those 2 players succeed. And I hope Johan Oviedo in particular, I hope that he kind of clicks in starting. Although we were kind of joking about this the other day, like other than Jose Quintana, the Pirates don't have a great history of pitching dev and getting guys, getting the most out of guys, Joe Musgrove and Garrett Cole. And I'm forgetting the guy in Tampa Bay right now.
Glasnow,
Shane Boz. There's many names that we could reference here.
It just keeps going.
But hopefully Oviedo, kind of bucks that.
They can develop some hitters though.
They can.
I suspect that Malcolm Nunez will hit some bombs against the Cardinals in the future, and we'll be like, damn, that could have been us, but we needed 2 months of Jose Quintana.
Yeah.
But that's how trades work.
Really quick before we move on from Quintana, I just think it's worth pointing out he's only 33. It seems like he would be like in his 40s because it feels like he's been around forever, but he's still young. I expect good things out of him. We can move on. I
was gonna say I could see possibly offering like another year to him if this goes really well.
Nate, that's gonna happen. I'm gonna say that's a foregone conclusion,
unless we get some good results from Liberatore and or Zach Thompson in these next 2 months.
Quintana is here to stay,
and also Wainwright is going to pitch for like 3 more years because
they're going to offer Quintana 2 years, $22 million at the end of the year, and he's going to stick around. I'm calling it now.
All right, put it on the board. All right, so one of two, I'd say, big trades from this deadline. So next, huge one. I know I just said that the Quintana trade. Here's the other one. The Cardinals.
Soto, eat your heart out.
Yeah, the Cardinals receive catcher Austin Allen from the Athletics. Ben has been lobbying for a catcher trade from the Athletics for a while now. You got it. This is the one you wanted. And the Cardinals gave up Carlos Garate, which I will be honest, that was the first time I had seen that person's name. I consider myself to some degree. I'm no Kyle, who we had on the show recently. I'm not that deep, but I consider myself pretty knowledgeable at the Cardinals farm system. I had not really seen this guy before. So
and I'll tell you, for Austin Allen, when this happened, I think I texted you and I said, "Oh, he's the hard throwing right-handed side armor." I was like, nope. No, it's a catcher. I was like, oh shit. Okay, I guess I don't know who Austin Allen is either.
Yeah, we're really putting this here. This trade and the last trade that we're going to talk about kind of happened simultaneously.
Yeah,
it's catching depth.
Yeah,
fine.
It looks good to me though. Like you look at his batting line, it's not pathetic. It's in AAA. The defense, he's more of a defender than a hitter. He's in his late 20s. Hopefully, he provides some competence behind the plate. That's all the Cardinals need right now.
Yeah. Well, you need security. Yachty's back, which we're going to talk about later. But only 2 more months.
Yeah.
And Kisner is maybe not going to be there much longer. And Herrera is supposed to be the catcher of the future, but also maybe not. So you need these redundancies where if everything falls apart, you at least have a guy you can stick back there that can catch a good game and give you a competitive at bat. And is that Allen? I don't know. We'll find out. But they need that depth.
Definitely makes you question like where is Ali Sanchez? Like where's Tyler Heineman? Like what happened to some of these guys that were in the system in spring and just aren't there? But that doesn't really matter. I hope that Austin Allen gets spun up quickly. The whole thing with getting a catcher spun up is just so much harder than any other position. Yeah. So I hope that it happens quick, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the bigs really quick.
Yeah. So moving to the last one, and I would say this is the biggest trade of the deadline, not just because of timing, but also because of impact and players given. So fan favorite, we loved him. Will probably be in my, favorite Cardinals of all time list for a very long time. Harrison Bader was shockingly, I think, traded to the New York Yankees for left-handed starter Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah.
And Montgomery, like Bader, is under team control until the end of 2023, which is something that the Cardinals had at least indicated they were interested in is not just making rental trades like they did with Quintana, but also acquiring someone who could help beyond. And they found that in this trade with the Yankees, which was announced, I think, like at 5 o'clock on the trade deadline, which was fun, because it was definitely getting a little doom and gloom.
Man, I was I was really not doing well. The things that we would be talking right now, if it was a Quintana and Allen
just
and that's
Quintana,
it, the tone of this podcast would be much different. Oh, and JoJo. I keep forgetting about JoJo.
Yeah. So my first emotion to this was, of course, like, man, like Bader, that's a bummer in the same way that trading Edmundo Sosa was a bummer. Is that like, it was like on a personal level.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, like that guy is awesome. Bader tots,
Yeah.
And, but I was almost immediately balanced with like, I think this is a really good trade for the Cardinals.
So I will say, and I love Bader. I think I've expressed my concern about his plantar fasciitis over the past 3 weeks, extensively. So I don't need to hit that anymore, but I guess I'll hit it one more time and I'll say that really freaks me out.
I mean, that's it, right? That's huge.
That's huge. I will say, my first thought was, oh my God, I cannot believe we got one of the Yankees pitchers. The Yankees pitching has kind of been the whole thing. Obviously Aaron Judge is a huge part of their however many games they have over everyone right now. Yeah. Best team in baseball. But you see Severino got moved to the 60-day IL. Their pitching, their group pitching RA is kind of scooted up as the season has gone on. Jamison Tyone hasn't looked as great as he did. Now, obviously, the
another
Yankees,
former Pirate.
They add him to the list.
Yeah.
The Pirates, poor Pirate. The Yankees' amazing team is led by 2 former Pirates. So I thought like the fact what I was getting at, they traded for Montas, so that makes an open up, I guess. But I figured a team like them, they would want to be acquiring pitching depth rather than shedding it off. So I was shocked. I don't understand the need from the Yankees' perspective. Aaron Judge is playing center field right now. Maybe they want to rest him more. They also have Aaron Hicks, who is not a fantastic center fielder, but he is a major league center fielder. So I was very surprised by the move in general. And I kind of felt, my personal thought was, holy crap, I can't believe we got Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah. I mean, he's a lefty. I'm going to go through some of his numbers here in a moment, but like, we have him for next year.
Yeah.
This is I think one of those sneaky Mo moves. And apparently the Yankees feel like they need that elite center field defense and Bader's speed to complement their clearly championship seeking team. Yeah. And I think this is a trade where they're like they're so good that they are seeking to improve their 25th man spot with like a guy like Harrison Bader, whereas the Cardinals are like, shit, we're trying to improve our third starting pitcher.
Harrison Bader, I think what you just said is incredible. Harrison Bader, probably not an everyday starter for the New York Yankees.
Right.
Which is insane.
A healthy Bader is not probably starting every day, which, yeah. And there is a clause where if Bader does not start for them this year, or there's like a playing time element to it where there'll be a player to be named later included in the package. I'm interested to hear what that player is. When it's a player to be named later, from my understanding, it's usually either someone from the existing draft class and they can't be traded, or it's just literally not negotiated yet.
Yeah.
And they'll figure it out when it happens, which probably isn't the case, because that seems like super, like the leverage is all over the place.
There could also be a short list that they've agreed upon to renegotiate, and they'll figure that out. And I think like, it seems, if you believe all the medical reports that the Cardinals were putting out about Bader, he is on his way back. I think it's reasonable to expect him to be back this season. And for his sake, I hope so. And to be totally honest, as a rabid baseball watcher that I think we both are, like, I can't wait to watch Bader playing for the Yankees in the playoffs and as the season winds down, because I love his game. I love how he goes about it. And he's going to be a superstar in New York, and everyone's going to be so behind him and the way that he plays, all that. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, same. And he's from New York, and he only has 1 year left on his contract.
He's from the Bronx. He's not like, he's from where the Yankees are. Like, that people are going to lose their minds over that.
Yeah. And he's flashy and he's fun. He's all the reasons why we all love Bader. So, I wanted to go over some reasons why we should be excited about Jordan Montgomery, though.
Besides the fact 6'6", 228.
Yeah,
big boy.
That's a pitcher's frame right there. So, there's the intangible stuff, pitching for the Yankees, all of that. But I saw some stats online, and I'm trying to be better about citing my sources. So this came from a tweet from Brandon Kiley on Twitter, which is at BK Sports Talk. Great follow. He took all of the really the big pitchers that were traded in this trade deadline and compared their stats to each other. So the list of pitchers was Jordan Montgomery, Noah Syndergaard, Tyler Mahle, Jake Odorizzi, Jose Quintana, Frankie Montas, and Luis Castillo. I think, pretty clearly those were the big pitchers that were moved this offseason, right? Among them, Jordan Montgomery, first of all, leads all of them in innings pitched. It's a boring one, but it is exactly what the Cardinals need right now.
Is.
In some of them he leads by a pretty good margin. He is on the higher end of FIP, which is not great, but it's also not horrible at a 3.9. He's right in the middle of the pack at K percentage, but he has the best walk percentage of the whole group, which is something that we've seen the Cardinals struggle with and target when trying to fix the poor pitching. We have a great defense. Let them play, right? Walks are bad. He has the second highest ground ball percentage. So you pair that with that good walk rate, and you've got someone who's perfectly set up for a good defensive team. He has the second lowest whip. So he's not letting guys on base. And he has the lowest hard hit rate. That, of course, leads to all of his ground balls. And then finally, and I thought this was the most interesting, he was not ranked very high on strikeout percentage, but he has the highest swinging strike percentage of all of the guys that were traded, including Luis Castillo, who is considered a strikeout pitcher.
Right.
So what do we got here? We've got a guy who's getting a lot of swing and misses, but the strikeouts aren't there because everyone is making soft contact and he's not walking anyone. Sounds like the perfect pitcher for the Cardinals.
And I think you're totally right. I have Baseball Savant pulled up in front of me right now, and he's a sinker changeup guy. And I think that speaks to what you're talking about, low strikeouts, because people are just pounding the ball into the ground, and weakly, like you said. And the only thing I think I would add, and I think this just reflects everything that you were reading from that tweet, is on the Baseball Savant, the little percentile rankings thing that everybody likes to kind of share out on social media. He is 91% or 91 percentile in walks and 90 percentile in chase rate. So everything that you said, I mean, that all of that is huge. I think like he throws, it's 40% sinkers, 25% change ups. And then he mixes in some curveball, four-seam fastball, and a little bit of cutter. And I think, I mean, that is essentially Waino's kit, that right. He is, I don't expect, he doesn't have the curveball like Waino does, but it's very similar to Matt's. It's very similar to Waino. They're definitely looking for a repertoire that makes a lot of sense. I think comparing him to Matt's is probably a pretty good comparison, but better around the plate. And by that, I mean, he's not throwing as many balls. This is a huge, huge, huge pickup for the Cardinals. I think, like you mentioned, the additional year of of control is also really, really important. But yeah, I absolutely love this deal. I think it's a slam dunk for the Cardinals. I think it immediately stabilizes the rotation, especially with Matz and Jack and everything that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you get Jack Flaherty back, it's a much better spot than it was, a couple months ago, where it's like we need him back because there are 3 openings in the rotation. Now it's like if you get Jack back, like who are you actually dropping? I think there's still some clear options there, but it's way, way better than it was before. And between Quintana and Montgomery, they should pitch every 5 days, should give you quality innings, which makes the bullpen better, which makes some of these guys like Hudson or, maybe when Matz comes back or if and when Flaherty comes back, you have a more rested bullpen for their sort of return to form starts. It's great. Like, this isn't the elite upgrade that some of us had kind of hoped, like a Pablo Lopez, who you're now slotting a guy into your number 1 or your number 2 spot, which is of course fun. But if you look at what the Reds gave up for Luis Castillo, the Mariners gave up to get from the Reds, that was a huge deal for the same amount of control that the Cardinals are getting for Jordan Montgomery. And the Cardinals traded from a position of real depth. Now, they don't have another Harrison Bader in the organization, but they do have Dylan Carlson, who is a very good center fielder, and they have like 18 different dudes that kind of deserve starts in right field right now. And so you open up those playing positions. We're going to talk about some of that here in a little bit. It just makes a lot of sense. And all of the unknown of Harrison Bader's plantar fasciitis, like, he might just not come back. And that sucks. And I really hope it's not the case. But
it's a chronic issue that he comes back and then he goes down, and he comes back and he goes down. I like I said, I was a little surprised that we got that much. I'm a little surprised the Yankees went for it. I'm a little surprised the Yankees traded from that player pool. Like, a very, very surprising move. And I think, like, if you spend any time on the Yankees subreddit or Twitter, I don't think anyone's really happy about it. So you
that's
take that
always
as a
fun.
win.
Of course, time will tell how this goes, but it's always nice when a trade happens and you see the other fan base just being like, what the fuck did we just do? This doesn't make any sense. Like, you want to be on that side rather than, the other side of it. So, altogether, I'd say it was one of the best trade deadlines we've had in quite a while. But at the same time, very Cardinals. Nobody was really giving up. No, like the top of the roster was not improved. The middle and the back of the roster was improved.
I think when you're associated with the Soto sweepstakes as much as the Cardinals were, there's almost no way we're coming out of this without feeling a little let down or disappointed or whatever you want to call it. But I think, circumstances where they are, I think the Cardinals did really well.
Well, it's I think there was, at least personally speaking, there was some hope that if the Cardinals were willing to make a big splash for Soto, then they'd be willing to make a big splash for there's no one else even close to Soto on the market, but make a big splash for an impact player elsewhere, in the same way that the Mariners did for Luis Castillo. Right or wrong, we'll find out. But, like, I think a lot of us thought the Cardinals were going to pivot towards a Pablo Lopez or even a Carlos Rodon, who I was really hoping for.
Rodon not getting traded is one of the biggest question marks of the deadline.
Yeah, well, there's a few of those, and I think we should just talk about it now because, the Giants did not trade Carlos Rodon, who's very likely he's already hit the minimums. He can opt out at the end of this year, and he very likely will. So he's a Cy Young contender this year. Apparently, the Giants let it be known that he was available, but their asking price was insane. And no one met that asking price. So he's just still there.
I just can't imagine nobody offered something that was over the qualifying offer unless they have intentions on backing up the Brinks truck and re-signing him, and they wanted to maintain that relationship. It's very maybe the weirdest hold of the trade deadline.
Yeah. After that, I'd say tied for the weirdest hold, especially considering all the media that was on it, was holding Wilson Contreras.
I thought you were going to drop a burger on the Rockies right there, because they held on to everything.
Yeah, but they didn't have anybody to trade anyway. So
Chad Kuhl would have got people back.
Daniel Bard
would have got people
but
back.
They didn't have a maybe best catcher in baseball or a Cy Young contender like the Giants had.
No, that's true.
And also I guess maybe it's just our market, but the Ian Happ Wilson Contreras hug, they got some play.
Yeah.
It was like that made you think that he had been told he was going to be traded.
Do you think they show up to work the next day being like, oh,
hey bro, let's hug it out again. Yeah. That was that we were hugging for a different reason.
Yeah. It's our pregame thing, our postgame thing.
Yeah. So with some of those guys being held though, the Marlins decide not to trade Lopez, which is fine. I understand that. The Giants, for whatever reason, don't trade Rodon. Cubs hold on to some of their guys. The market, there were a lot of people that weren't expected or that were expected to be traded that did not. And ultimately, I'm happy with the Cardinals trade deadline. It was not flashy, but I think they made some meaningful upgrades where they needed to. And I think this gives them a shot at the division and a shot at the wild card without giving up,
I would argue, comparing to what the rest of the division did, it definitely puts you in a pretty good spot. We'll talk about Central here in a second, but
let's do that now. Let's go into let's talk about what the rest of the division did. Why don't you take us into?
Well, I'll start with talk about bewildering moves on the trade deadline, or this is a little bit before, but so the Brewers, they traded Josh Hader to the Padres for a haul. Don't get that twist. Very good closing pitcher. It's like happened. It was Roberto Ozuna was the only other time that happened.
And Ken Giles,
and that was for Roberto Ozuna being a piece of shit reasons. And the Houston not caring about that. Anyways, so Josh Hader traded to the Padres for Taylor Rogers, Dinelson Lamet, who was just DFA'd today, which makes the trade even weirder. And then prospects Robert Gasser and Esteury Ruiz. Robert Gasser, I believe he's some type of pitcher, and Ruiz is a pretty decent outfielder. And I think that's all fine and dandy. I also will call out that during this deadline, the Brewers got Matt Bush from the Texas Rangers and signed Trevor Rosenthal, who I believe was an unrestricted free agent. My thing about this is I think that this is about as shrewd of a trade as I have ever seen. Trading a superstar closer away from a first place team whose whole thing is their pitching, their 1-2 punch in the bullpen. I don't know if you saw any of these, the interviews that Devin Williams.
I saw the Devin. I stopped watching the Devin Williams one because I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore. That dude is so bummed.
I think that it's one of those things. It's hard for us to really know. But what does that do to a clubhouse when you're I think that you and I can sit here with our little monopoly pieces and say, yeah, this is probably a good trade. You're getting a really good closer, not Josh Hader good. You get a little more control, and you also get some other players. I'm not sure I would say the Padres blew the Brewers out of the water. But it was a good trade. I think, just looking at it like that. But what does it do to a clubhouse? How does if Devin Williams falters in the closer role, what does that do? I just can't imagine taking somebody away from a team who's in a position that they're in the standings. And like I said, how they're built around this.
Yeah, it's a strange move. I have gone back and forth between whether this was who made the smart move here, because in the same way, the Padres, they acquire Josh Hader, which just feels like no matter what, a good move. And to be fair,
he's pretty good.
He's pretty good. Rogers has been faltering a little bit lately,
Right.
But they also gave up Ruiz. I don't know how much you followed him, and it could just be a hot streak, but the dude looks like the next. These aren't necessarily good comps, but you can see like it's like the Adalberto Mondesi, Billy Hamilton, these guys that are faster than everyone in baseball. He has something like 60 steals in his first like 80 games at AAA this year or in the minors. I'm fudging some numbers here, but he's had an insane run up.
No, look it up while you're talking.
I think he had like 13 home runs and 57 stolen bases before the All-Star break for their AA and AAA squad. And he got called
23 plus 37 is 60 even. Yeah, there you go. So that's his AA and AAA number, stolen base numbers combined. He also walks at a good clip.
Yeah, but this all he basically entered the year as like an unknown and just went bonkers and made it all the way to the majors. And then the Padres are so stacked, he got called up because they couldn't keep him in AAA anymore, but they don't really have a spot to play him. And so the Brewers just got this guy that, again, maybe it's a crazy hot streak, but he certainly looks like an incredibly exciting player. And they got another reliever who's maybe not, Josh Hader, I think, is arguably a Hall of Fame track for a reliever.
Yeah.
If he was on the Yankees or the Dodgers, he would absolutely be on a Hall of Fame track. But Brewers. But anyway, I'm rambling at this point, but I've gone back and forth on like who this trade makes a lot of sense for. It's a very strange trade. Ultimately, I'm just glad that the Cardinals don't have to see Josh Hader anymore.
Oh my God, yes.
He was
that is so for sure.
This is a Cardinal podcast, so I'll take, I think like this is a good trade for the Brewers long term. But in the short term, like, yeah, it's strange.
It's a weird move.
And the way Devin Williams was so pissed or upset about it. But that's that narrative stuff that like you can draw a narrative for everything or maybe Devin Williams, now we'll see it. He's the new head of the bullpen and it's his job and now he's going to run with it. And like you can craft a narrative for anything.
I think it's more that I would imagine, I think it's less to do with like that position specific aspect of it. And it's more, I have to imagine the Brewers clubhouse feels like they took away an asset from a champion or a team that's in first place and potentially a championship team. So that I think is probably the bigger concern, but we'll see. I mean, that it is definitely narrative-y type stuff, but it also depends, like you're talking about, Taylor Rogers just starts kind of falling off. That's real. But we'll find out. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the Cubbies. We already talked. They did not trade Contreras. They did not trade Hap, even after Huggate. Not Huggate. That's not what it was. It was just a cute hug. I'll take that. Too much gravitas. They did make a few trades, although small. They traded Michael Givens to the Mets. They traded David Robertson to the Phillies and Scott Effross to the Yankees for all minor league pieces. Probably good moves. I think we talked about that. That was kind of what the Cubs were setting up. Like either that bullpen was going to save them and their offense was going to click, or they were going to do exactly what they just did. So no surprise.
Outside of not trading Contreras, I think the Cubs have generally done a good job in their rebuild.
Yeah.
And that's how this deadline felt to me as well.
Yeah. I just feel bad for Suzuki. He's, awesome player stuck in a stupid town in a stupid ballpark and wearing
He made the choice though. That he just signed with them.
He did. But did you hear about, there was some like misleading about the weather that exists in Chicago, and Suzuki was kind of like, you said this, and Chicago early in the season is cold. I'll try to look that up and share it with you. But essentially, I'm forgetting the GM of the Cubs all of a sudden.
Which I've not heard that. That's very funny. But also, Suzuki, you too have access to the internet. So
that is true.
Don't get fooled.
But I get it though. If you're like, I'm going to go sign a big contract, what's Chicago like? Tell me what the weather's like. You are right, Nate. But wow, you'd be a shrewd GM. Nice
Thank
guy. That's not a compliment.
I'll take it.
Let's move on to the Reds. The Reds, I hesitate to say that they had a good trade deadline, but I think if you look at where their farm is and where it was and where it is, I think I saw that they were rated 24th before these trades started happening, and now they're rated 8th by Fangraphs metrics. So good for you, I guess. I'm just going to hit the highlights because I don't really think we should break down every little prospect they got back. All I'll say is the Mariners paid for Castillo. They really paid for Castillo. That was a trade that after I saw that go down, I didn't even want to entertain the idea of the Cardinals paying the added divisional tax that would have been included.
Right.
So,
yeah.
with moving on from that.
We'll see. Just real quick on the Castillo trade, Noel V. Marte, who is the headline of that. For what it's worth, his prospect shine has started to diminish a little bit this season. So he's still very highly ranked, but coming into this season, a lot of people considered him a top 10 prospect, and he has fallen into the top 30 prospect sort of range, which is still very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but his top 10-ish status was around projectables and not around performance because he's still very young. And so performance is starting to lower him. And there's a possibility that, the Mariners were able to dump a faltering prospect at the right time. So this could end up looking differently for the Mariners if Marte does not turn it around in the way that a lot of people think. But also, he's super young, and a half season is an incredibly small sample size for a young player. So he could end up coming back with a vengeance, and the Reds fleeced the hell out of the Mariners for this.
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously, I hope that it goes poorly for the Reds because of what they've done to their fan base. Not to mention their interdivision rivals, but it is just crazy if you look at who they had on their team last year to where they have ended up post trade deadline in 2022. It's just honestly embarrassing. Moving on, Tyler Mahle went to the Twins for a nice haul. Inexplicably, Tommy Pham is now patrolling the outfield in Fenway. He is a Red Sox, which I
thought your stab tweet was good, by the way.
I got no play on that. That was good.
It was underrated.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think I said Red Sox take a stab at improving their outfield or something. That's good. Well, don't come at me, Tommy. You would win. Don't hurt me. And then Brandon Drury to the Padres, another player to the Padres. Guy having a great. He was the best player on the Reds this year. Position player at least. A guy that's hitting bombs and can play all over the field. So another impact pickup by the
grand
Padres.
Slam in his first game with the Padres.
He did.
Yeah, he's been good. He's been really good. And they got I think the Padres 6th overall prospect for him. So a good deal for the Reds. That worked out for them.
Yeah.
I thought the Reds had a pretty good deadline. It's also
caveat that they ripped apart a competitive team.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. They're selling a team that could have competed.
If the Cardinals decided to sell off right now, their prospect haul would look incredible. It's like saying
or it's like the Nationals.
Yeah.
They won the World Series in 2019.
Yeah.
And now in 2022, almost that entire core is gone.
I'm convinced the learners, they won their World Series and then they're like cashing out.
Yeah, they're done.
I'm 99% sure that's what happened there.
It makes sense. But that's why they're getting all these biggest trades of all time, insane returns because they're trading some of the best players of the last 5 years, so.
All right. And then the final team to talk about, Pittsburgh. We already talked about them, though. They made a trade with the Cardinals that we discussed at length. Thank you for Quintana. I hope Stratton is effective.
Yeah. Yeah. They're they just don't even have anyone to trade. So
no. Well, those players are on the Nationals or on the Yankees or in Tampa Bay or go on and on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that concludes our first half of this, at least.
I think we're just going to go long today.
I think we might go a little long.
Yeah.
And that's cool. It's a big time, for the league and for the Cardinals. So before we move to the back half, though, which will not be as long as this first half, but we want to take a moment to remind everyone that we are supported on Patreon. That's patreon.com/talkingaboutbirds. We have multiple different levels, but either way, any supporter gets access to our private Discord server. We call it the Bird Scored. We had a lot of fun over this last week talking about the rumors, talking about the trade deadline, just chatting about the Cardinals and what was happening. It's a great place to go to speak directly to other Cardinals fans. That isn't on Twitter where you're just sort of hitting send out into the ether and hoping someone happens to see it on their timeline. We look at everything on the Discord, and it's growing. We want to shout out a new patron, John Noble. We're super excited to have you as a part of the Discord, and thank you so much for supporting the show. And again, that's patreon.com/talkingaboutbirds. If you can't join that, we always appreciate a great review on your favorite podcast app. It helps. It really does. And it makes us feel good as long as you say nice things.
Yeah.
And if you're going to say mean things, say them about Ben.
Nope. 5 stars only.
Just tweet mean things at Ben and leave good reviews. All right. Ben, if they want to say mean things about you, where do they find us online?
Yeah, follow us on Twitter at Talk About Birds. We are there constantly, both of us, all of the time. Find us there. You can also follow us on Instagram at Talking About Birds. And of course, you can email talkaboutbirds@gmail.com if you have any questions or thoughts or anything you want to share with the podcast. And per usual, I'm trying to think, I don't know. I think Nate kind of was goosed me a little bit for this watermelon thing. I think just send in hate mail towards Nate and let him know that I will be successful. Or actually, no, better yet, send in things that are encouraging to me, because I truly don't know how successful I am going to be. Surprisingly enough, never attempted to do this. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, make sure reach out to us. We appreciate the little community that we have around us, and reach out.
Yeah. We appreciate everyone who has supported the show thus far. So, all right, moving on. A few things to touch on. We just have some Cardinals news and notes. We would have normally done this at the top of the show if not for the trade deadline. I think first and foremost, outcomes aside, we are all very happy to have Yadi back as a starting catcher for the St. Louis Cardinals.
I think it was 37 games.
It felt so much longer than
that. It really did.
Yeah. And, Waino and Yadi continue to check those boxes and march towards that record that I honestly care more about than I care about, like, a lot of the outcomes of this season, frankly.
Agree. Yeah.
It's legacy. They moved into second all time, 317. And it's great. The team talks about it like I tend to like kind of guffaw at narrative stuff a little bit, or guffaw is not the right word.
Yeah, that was lame. What are you talking about?
I tend to like I think that the poo-poo. I don't like saying poo-poo. I tend to think that the narrative stuff is overblown.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is some legitimacy to everybody talking about how the clubhouse is different with Yadi back. Just the game feels different with Yadi back. It just that tracks. That makes sense to me.
The first inning he comes back, there's a strike him out, throw him out.
Yeah, it's so great.
First inning he's back.
Yeah, it's so good. And we have to get used to a non-Yadi world. Like, this is it, but like it's different knowing he's just gone because he's retired versus like he's on the shelf, So so he's back and it's great. And I hope that he manages to make through the rest of the season and they break the record and we all just, go and give Yadi a big hug. And he then goes back to kicking basketballs in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Yeah. He deserves a send off, and Cardinals fans deserve to be able to send him off. And, however this season ends, I'm just glad that he's back and he looks to be healthy or whatever. The knee's less inflamed. Very happy about that.
So we already talked about it, but Paul DeJong is now our starting shortstop again. I don't think there's much more to say than hopefully he's back and it clicks. You got that defense that we want, and
do you want some super small sample size good news?
Sure.
Paul DeJong has 12 at bats in the big leagues since coming back. 5 of those at bats have ended with hard hit balls, so that means 95 plus. It's basically nothing. I'm really trying to find something good to say here, but we've seen him hit a couple of balls over the wall. I think we've seen, the approach is the approach. The fact that he's hitting the ball hard early, we'll take that. It's good. It's better than not.
Yep, we'll take it. So we'll see. Continue to monitor that, but I think we do know now that the quote unquote experiment of Edman at short will be totally fine.
Yeah.
So I expect that the leash will be a little different for DeJong at shortstop.
Yeah, I think so.
So,
Gorman's got to play.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's talk about right field a little bit. We've seen Nootbaar. Dickerson has been left or right. Depending on O'Neill's health. Let me just say, we have always been Corey Dickerson fans on this show. We've always supported Corey Dickerson. We've always lobbied for more playing time.
Yes.
And you know what? Finally, a show like this is rewarded for our courage, frankly, to support Corey Dickerson.
Yeah. I think that everything you said is 100% accurate. I'm glad he is getting the playing time he gets. He deserves it. There's no other option.
May he keep it up.
Well, so let's talk about that. May he keep it up. He is starting to slug a little bit. He's over the past couple of weeks, he's got over a 600 slugging percentage. The narrative on the broadcast is that he's what is it? They keep saying something. He's swinging out of his shoes, or he's swinging with intent, or something like that. And I'm fine with that. Say whatever you want. What the hell was he doing before? I think he was just missing the ball, guys.
Swinging with malintent.
Yeah. So sure, I don't really know what to think of that. Corey Dickerson is what he is. Depth piece, 25th man on the roster type piece. What I think is much more exciting is what Nootbaar has been doing recently. Noot, he's a baby. Which is good. I think he's a much better defender than Corey Dickerson, which is good. He walks at a really good clip, which is really good. And yeah, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when Noot was kind of digging himself out of that hole. I just did not believe he was that bad of a hitter. I'm not sure he's going to steal right field and run with it for the next 6 years, but he was not a sub 200, no power, no nothing type hitter.
Right. Yeah, and it's been good. They've needed it. We were pretty comfortable with trading Harrison Bader, but the outfield has been in flux for a while now, and having Nootbaar and Dickerson at least contributing offensively has helped. It's we haven't really talked about it. It's been a rough couple weeks for outcomes for the Cardinals, but they've been not a part of that problem.
No. And I'll say, we're talking about two lefties that maybe will be taking over some time in right field, left field, however that shakes out. But Burley down in AAA is just going off right now. Alec Burleson is having a great season in AAA. And I have to imagine it is only a matter of time. I cannot tell how committed the Cardinals are to Noot and Dickerson. And maybe it possibly hurts Alec Burleson that he's also a lefty, who's not an incredible outfielder. But that's really what I'd like to see. I mean, unless Noot just keeps going off, I guess I will add a massive caveat there. I'll take Noot all day.
Yeah, I'm pretty content to let Noot continue to get at bats. I appreciate the recent performance by Dickerson, but I'd love to see Burleson get some of those at bats.
Yeah.
But yeah, Burleson he's at that point where there's nothing left for him to do at AAA other than continue to mash AAA pitchers until he gets his spot at the starting or at the MLB level.
Yeah. Yeah, I pulled up the numbers here. Just to, he's hitting 335 batting average, and he's got a 562 slugging percentage.
Not bad.
I wouldn't say he's mastered it, but maybe he needs a new challenge. He's also not even striking out that much. It's just over 15% K rate. I mean, he's looking great.
Yeah.
I wonder. I don't know about his defense as well as I wish I did, but I wonder if maybe that's part of what's holding him back. But
I think it's just there's too many guys right now.
Yeah.
Yepez hopefully coming off of the IL soon.
I call him Yepez.
Me too.
I thought of a stupid joke the other day. Do you want to hear it?
I mean, yeah.
It was after Gorman hit a big home run. And I thought to myself, Gore boy has really turned into a Gore man. You know, all right, not good. You're laughing though. I'll take that.
All right, that's gonna do it for this episode of talking about. Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. You laughed, so
it would be better if his name was Gore Boy.
I know. I had a private thought, and I thought to share it. Okay.
That's what the people come for. What else? Anything else, Cardinals, before we just talk about the league?
No, I have written here on the outline, let's talk about Pallante or Dak, but the Cardinals already made that decision.
They made that.
Before we started recording. Pallante's getting moved back to the bullpen. Dak is sticking in the rotation. Not sure if I agree with that. I imagine this is more of a Pallante has been flexible in the past. Dakota has only done this, and I'm sure it is more of that decision than anything else. Especially coming off of Pallante's last performance against the Nationals, where he just looked so good.
I mean, it's really game shutout chance.
That curveball was cruising. That fastball looked great. He was locating. First pitch strikes all over the place. But hopefully Montgomery and Quintana are going to lock things down, and then we have like a bullpen ace or somebody highly effective in Pallante. And honestly, those trades, they give Dak a little bit more runway. Like you were kind of talking about this earlier. If we have 4 competent starters in Miles Waino, Monty, and Q, you can have Dak kind of figure it out a little bit, because he is a good starter. There's a good starter in there. But we just didn't have the runway to even allow him to find that. So we'll see how that goes.
Yep. All right. So let's wrap it up and talk about some of the bigger moves outside of the Central. So what do you got? What do you want to talk about?
Well, the first note I have on here is that the Rockies did nothing. I already said that, but it is worth bringing up again because I live in Denver. It is just ever present, and I can't not think about it. I wrote another joke for this one. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Damn it. You're not going to like this. I said he Bill Schmidted the bed. Bill Schmidt being the GM for the Rockies.
You wrote that. You have. Where did you write that? Did you put it?
I wrote it to myself. I texted it to myself, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. You can't forget that one.
So Gore Boy was better.
No,
I don't need to hear that. Bad. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on.
Schmidt the bed with your Gore Boy joke.
You liked it. You just used it. It's part of the vernacular now. Everyone's going to be saying that.
Yep.
But for real, the Rockies deserve.
It's always good when you give a joke and then immediately follow it up with explaining it to me.
Well, I was curious because the Rockies are the Rockies. Do people even know who the GM of the Rockies? Like, who cares who the GM of the Rockies is?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, in a trade that I thought was extremely interesting and definitely a bit strange from the Dodgers side, the Dodgers trade for Joey Gallo with the New York Yankees. Now, I do think that there is probably a non-zero chance that the Dodgers sprinkle some pixie dust and he becomes a 250 hitter that is capable of putting up 40 bombs in a season. But I just thought it was a weird move. It's like he's a guy that you have to play in the majors. I don't really see where he plays. Maybe this is, they're pulling back time from friend of the pod, Bellinger, and moving Mookie into center, or I don't know exactly that's going to look like, but I just thought that was a weird move. They have a lot of lefties that strike out a lot. I don't know. Weird move.
My guess is someone in their player development is like, I know what the problem with Gallo
Let me
is.
at him. Yeah.
Yeah. And stupid friggin' Dodgers are going to turn him back into what he was with the Rangers.
Yeah.
And, it's going to be super annoying when
that's our fantasy pickup recommendation is go get Gallo. The Dodgers are going to fix him somehow. The Phillies, I think they had a pretty productive trade deadline. They were the winners of Mr. Syndergaard, which is probably a good move for them. It is funny to me that they have Syndergaard and Wheeler on the same starting staff, and that Wheeler is by far the better pitcher. I just, a few years ago when they were on the Mets together, I would have never have guessed that to be the outcome, but here we are. In conjunction with getting Edmundo Sosa from the Cardinals, the Phillies also traded for Brandon Marsh, which I guess I also found this one bewildering. Like what is
they're trying to course correct. Okay.
Well, what is the Angels window if they don't think Brandon Marsh can help their team?
Well, yeah, it's strange from the Angels standpoint, but from the Phillies standpoint, they're like, okay, so having a DH at every position isn't working like we thought it would. Let's acquire some actually defensively proficient players. Yeah. And I mean, Brandon Marsh is a great ad for them. I think he's a good player. I don't know what
center fielder.
Yeah. I don't know what the Angels were planning on, like how that fits their rebuild.
Yeah.
Super strange move, but good for the Phillies, which sucks because we're kind of in direct competition with them for a wild card spot. But
we are, and I think I think an interesting question. We'll talk about this as the year goes on. I'm sure is who made their team better? Did the Phillies or the Cardinals win the trade deadline? Because I think you're right on with that. Like that is who we will be laser focused on, unless the Cardinals or Phillies start to pull away. In something that I find hilarious, Whit Merrifield, who is traded to the Blue Jays, somebody who a couple of weeks ago did not travel to Toronto because of his vaccination status, is now a Blue Jay. Luckily for him, they are in a 10-game road series. Oh, Mona, my cat just clawed my legs. She's pro Whit Merrifield. But they are on
Mona might be anti-vax.
They're on a 10-game road trip, so they have about 2 weeks to figure out what's going to happen here. My guess is that Merrifield will get vax and play the home games.
Well, he said it himself in a pretty hypocritical statement, in my personal opinion, that if the Royals were competing for the playoffs, maybe he would have had a different point of view.
Yeah.
And well, buddy, now you are. So I have to imagine this had been sorted to some degree before the Blue Jays acquired him, but we have not really heard much from it. So if it had been sorted pre that, you would have thought that it would have been a pretty fast follow on the news.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Interesting.
Right.
What a weird set of circumstances.
And I think we covered our opinions on this whole topic last week. But I do just think of all teams to acquire Whit Merrifield, that is
very funny.
Just very funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric Hosmer was eventually traded from the Padres. He ended up with the Red Sox, another team that had a very strange trade deadline. Obviously acquiring Hosmer, Pham, trading their starting catcher, who probably should have been an all-star this year, Christian Vasquez. What the hell are they doing?
I just always think it's funny when guys have like a very certain set of teams on their no trade clause. Like he had the Nationals, no. So you're like, okay, maybe it's not, maybe he doesn't want to live on the East Coast, but he's got Boston is not on his no trade clause. I don't know. Is it just like a fuck you in particular sort of thing? Or, I guess everyone has their own reason.
Yeah, I think players have all kinds of reasons. And I would have to Boston's one of those franchises that I think everybody would be happy to play for. They're one of the A-list clubs or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I don't know. And some players will put the A-list clubs on that so that they have leverage if and when they're traded for. Like who knows what it is.
Yeah. I'll say props to Hosmer for actually utilizing his no trade clause. Like, I feel like it almost every time they're like, he waived it, you know?
What I don't get, it's more the Boston side of it. Like, why would you trade for Eric Hosmer? Who's going to be, they're paying him league minimum. The Padres are basically picking up his whole salary for the next 3 years. But why trade for him? Like, are you going for it? Are you committing to Bobby Dahlbeck or not? Is this your, like, he's going to be around for a minute, and he's been a bad player for a long time. I just don't get what's happening to the point where I'm starting to question Chaim Bloom and if he is good at his job or not.
Yeah. I think they're trying to play both sides. You know, they're like, we got to get some value for some of these guys that we can. And also, like, it wasn't that long ago that we were in a playoff spot. Maybe we can bounce back. And if we do, we don't want to be completely caught flat footed with that bounce back. Like, it's, you know, when you try to play the middle, you end up just generally being bad on both sides, you know? So not the stance that I think most people would, most teams would take or most fans would prefer, but I guess we'll see how it works out.
Yeah. We talked about this already, but the Yankees obviously got Frankie Montas and Harrison Bader. The Braves, again, I think had probably a really solid deadline. They got Jake Odorizzi, who we were talking about last week as a good target for the Cardinals. And I think somebody that makes sense as being their fifth starter and just kind of locking that down for them. They traded him for Will Smith, which I think was a pretty good trade, both sides. They also got Robbie Grossman, who is just outfield depth. And that's what the Braves do, is they trade for outfield depth every year. The move that, again, I'm going to pick on the Angels again, is that they traded for Raisel Iglesias, which I think makes a lot of sense for the Braves. But again, the Angels, this is his first year of a 4-year contract with the Angels. What are they doing?
Yeah.
Are they going to trade Ohtani and Trout? Are they just going to rip it all down and not be a competitive team anymore? I don't get it.
I don't have a source for this one, but I read a take online not too long ago that basically, like, the owners of the Angels just really love their stars, like the star power side of it. They like having billboards with big names on it and things like that. And so that's why they'll go and they'll sign these big name players, you know, and like they value an Ohtani and they value a Trout and they value going and getting Rendon or Pujols or Josh Hamilton or whoever it might be. Like, they want to be the flashy team, but they don't actually care past that. They just want to be this like celebrity team. And so, you know, Raisel, like, not a celebrity, even though he's one of the better closers in the game. Like, it just, they're done. They're not winning, and they could get something for him. So they traded him. I don't know. Not a complete thought there, but it was a very strange move. And obviously the Braves are now better for having Iglesias, which is bad for the Cardinals. But
I would argue the Braves are better than they were last year.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Freddie Freeman, it's hard. Olsen has been good, but he's not been as good as Freeman. But like, the rest of the team is probably better. Riley has taken another step forward.
Yeah.
So,
and Acuna is healthy. The only person they don't have healthy is their second baseman, Ozzie Albies. But
and he's probably coming back soon.
Yeah. So last thing I have on my list, and there are many other trades that we are not hitting. I don't know if there's anything else you want to bring up. But the last thing I have on my list is Houston gets Christian Vasquez from the Boston Red Sox in a move that makes a ton of sense for Houston. I think this is a great move by Houston. They have gotten essentially zero production from catcher, and Christian Vasquez is a good one. And they also got Trey Mancini, who I am disappointed by. I wish that O's fans would have been rewarded for sticking around and the O's being the team that they are this year. But that's not going to happen. And he is now an Astro, and he'll be dunking, a bunch of home runs into the Crawford boxes for the rest of the year. And I guess good for him.
Yeah, I think that trade is going to be really good for the Astros from a story standpoint. The narrative stuff that I was kind of poo-pooing earlier, like it's kind of a bummer to see the Orioles trade and sell, especially now that they're like climb back to relevancy and all that. But I think it makes sense, even if it's kind of a bummer. And I think that Mancini, it's a significant upgrade for his approach, and the type of player he is just fits in the Houston ballpark so much better than the Baltimore ballpark. And I think he's going to have a really good time there.
Yeah.
So it'll probably work out for everyone, but I can understand the Orioles fan base being pretty bummed that the Orioles still sold. They sold their closer, they sold the heart of their team after having such a run.
My God, when Trey Mancini was traded, he talked about how the training staff saved his life.
Yeah.
Detecting the cancer as early as they did and getting him on the treatment as early as they did. And, that doesn't pull at your emotional heartstrings, then I don't know what would. But
right.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's probably a good baseball move for all considered. The Orioles aren't going to really do any damage this year. They better go spend some money in free agency.
Well, they did
next year.
say, and whether they do this or not, they have at least backed it up in saying that, like, this off season, it's full speed ahead. So I appreciate them saying that. I hope that after saying that, they really need to make at least one big splash. Because, basically since calling up Adley Rushman, like, it's a new team. And, I think that is a credit to him and to the importance of an elite catcher and what it can do for a team. So we like the Orioles,
fellow bird,
talking about other birds. So.
Hell yeah.
All right. What else?
Those are the only ones I have listed on my list. I don't know if there's anything else you want to hit, but I think those are the big ones. There's obviously many more trades outside of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say, probably the big winners are the teams that were probably already in competition. The Braves look great. The Mets probably could have done a little bit more. They got Vogelbach, and they got Darren Ruff, and they got Tyler Naquin, some little moves like that. I'm surprised I didn't see them go a little harder, get some power.
Yeah.
Although Vogelbach did hit a grand slam today before we started recording. So yeah, I think we hit the big ones, and we'll see how it plays out, and we'll move on.
Yeah. There was that report that the Mets are afraid to trade prospects because they feel really bad about trading Pete Crow Armstrong.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty funny, because that's kind of like how it works, trading prospects, but whatever. It's the Mets. You're
trading for now.
Yeah.
It might be worse later. That's
there's always something to laugh about with the Mets.
So. Yes, there is.
All right. This has been a long episode, Ben. But of course, it was one of the more dramatic trade deadlines that we've had. And for Cardinals fans, one of the more exciting, even if comparatively speaking, it was still relatively dull.
Yeah.
So before we end, though, it's time to return to a favorite. We haven't done it for a little while, but a game that you have been successful at consistently.
Okay.
So here we are for another game, another round of Who Is This Guy?
All right.
Who is this guy?
All right. So if this is your first time listening, welcome to the show. Thanks for sticking all the way through this.
Hi, everybody.
I have a player that at least one point in their career, they played for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yes.
I have 5 facts about them, starting with really obscure and moving towards more and more direct. I'm going to give the fact, and then Ben has to guess who that player was. He doesn't have to make a guess at every round, but that's kind of what we've been doing. Is that
you should? That's sports. Yeah,
it's the sporting way.
Yes.
So Ben has typically gotten it after 2 or 3 facts. So we'll see.
I'm pretty smart.
It's been a couple of weeks since you've been trounced by our guests, so you're back. You're back on
cocky bullshit.
We have some more guests maybe lined up here for the future, and we'll knock you down a peg or two.
Thank you.
Okay, so fact number 1: this player was born on July 8th, 1986 in Reynosa, Mexico.
Reynosa, Mexico. Okay, so this person is close to our age. Likely still playing. Born in Mexico, probably Mexican, maybe not. I'm going to say that they're probably Mexican. All right, now I'm trying to think of Mexican Cardinals players. Let's give me Giovanni.
Nope.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
He is Mexican though, right? My way off on that?
I don't know. Look it up.
I'm gonna look that up.
And say you're gonna stumble
yes,
on some...
he was. Yes, he was.
Okay. No, not Gallegos. Good
He's
guess.
Younger than me though. Damn.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think the ages
hurts.
are the ages are a little off there. So
Yeah.
all right. This player played with these teams in no particular order.
I think I got it now, but do your thing.
Okay.
Or should I just guess?
Did you just Google Mexican Cardinals and now
No, but I thought of another Mexican.
All right.
Do your thing. Do your thing.
Okay. All right. This player played with St. Louis.
Yes.
Chicago Cubs. New York Yankees. Minnesota.
Yeah, I know it.
And Atlanta.
Jaime Garcia.
That's right.
Yes.
Jamie Garcia, favorite.
Garcia. Yeah. On the old version of the show, we definitely had a review that was like, the show's fine, the guys are good or whatever, but the stupid Jamie Garcia jokes need to stop.
It became a thing.
It became a thing.
That's part of why I chose him for this. So
yeah.
Here were the rest of my facts.
Yeah.
In 2010, he was fourth in the NL with a 2.7 ERA.
Wow.
That would have been the next one. Alerting you to the fact that he was a pitcher and had one really good year.
Yeah.
And then I thought I'd mix it up a little bit. So Baseball Reference has a thing that they like a comparison chart at the bottom of every player's page where it says similar players.
Yeah.
Thought it'd be interesting. Similar players to Jaime Garcia. Number 1, John Neese, former pitcher for the Mets.
Okay.
Number 2, Tanner Roark. Number 3, Britt Burns, who I had never heard of. Number 4, Danny Duffy. And number 5, Jake Odorizzi.
All right.
So then my last stat was traded to the Atlanta Braves for Luke Dykstra, Chris Ellis, and John Gant, which turned out to be a very good trade for the Cardinals. John Gant specifically had a good run with the Cardinals before being traded, and Jaime really didn't do much for any.
Yeah, he was just always one of those guys where how is he not one of the best pitchers in the league? It never added up to me, but it
never clicked.
It never clicked. Yeah.
All right, one last bit of trivia.
Yeah,
it is true that I think all of us would say it never really clicked for Jaime Garcia.
Yeah,
the upside was always there. How much money do you think he made in his big league career?
Oh God. Jamie Garcia. I remember one time I was working retail and he came into the mall and was very impolite to me. That doesn't give me anything on this, but I just needed to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know. He was around for a while. He just never did anything. We did some stuff, I guess. I don't know. I'll give him. I'm going to guess he was in the league for a decade. So he earned some scratch. I'm going to say $35 million.
You were right about how long he was in the league. He pitched for 10 years.
He kicked around for a while, yeah.
He made $60 million.
Damn.
10 years of, upside.
Yeah.
60 million generational wealth.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Wow.
Except for maybe he's a dick, so I don't know.
I mean, people being mean to me is by no means a, that shouldn't color. Yeah.
It's kind of
the whole the
default reaction.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So good for him.
Wow, good. Yeah, it's good for him. I think like the model of a frustrating, although successful player. Like he was the weird thing. Like maybe our expectations were just too high for old Jamie Garcia.
I don't know. It never felt like it all came together. He was hurt a lot, which isn't his fault per se.
Thoracic outlet syndrome or whatever, where they have to like pop your shoulder out of the socket and clean it up. That was him.
Because I know, didn't Loge have that as well?
Loge had a thing where his forearm muscle would not. It would just be hyper tense and it would not release to the point where I remember this very specifically. He had to get this surgery. Muscles have like a sheath around them, and he had to get this surgery where they like removed part of the sheath so the thing could relax. And then I very specifically remembered he had this gnarly scar, so he got a crazy bird tattoo over his whole forearm, kind of blocking the scar. But no, I remember that very specifically because of how disgusting I thought it sounded.
Well, he had to get like it was like a motocross. Normally motocross guys would get that surgery from gripping the handlebar. I know motocross words.
Okay.
Gripping the handlebars.
Gripping the handlebar. All
right. Well, you got it in 2.
Yeah.
Good job.
I'm smart.
We're all very proud of you.
It was really that there have not been a ton of Mexican-born Cardinals players. That's really what helped me out there.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that'll do it. One of our longer episodes. It's going to be an interesting last 60 games for the Cardinals. Yes. Playoff race on multiple fronts. Is the rotation short up? We'll find out. And we'll be back next week, as always, with another episode. We'll find out whether Ben did or did not smash that watermelon with his thighs. And was it worth it? We'll find out.
I know the answer to that. Oh, Vin Scully.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way that this podcast can do him justice, but he needs to be mentioned. I think one of the most important baseball people of all time, definitely of our generation. Rest in peace.
Our generation, the generation before, and the generation before that. Yeah, I watched him calling Hank Aaron's 715th home run recently. That footage is out there, and he called that game.
Yes,
and it's incredible. It's absolutely worth a watch. He has that perfect blend of sort of highlighting the moment that you're watching, explaining it in context and what it means for history, and also just being silent and letting the moment play out. It's fantastic. So
artist, poet, genius, total voice of multiple generations. Yes. Sorry, had to get that out before we ended.
I agree 100%. So on that, we'll end. We'll be back next week as always. Thank you again, everyone who listens and who made it this far into the episode. And until next week, go Cardinals.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Walking